Welcome to Oops, I'm Evolving. I'm Morgan, and this is the podcast where we take those big, mind-blowing spiritual concepts and break them down into the real life shit you can actually use. Because let's be honest, real growth doesn't happen in the highlight reel. It happens in the shadows, in the messy, uncomfortable WTF moments. So let's talk about it, air it all out, and level up. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Oops, I'm Evolving. Let's talk about boundaries. And I don't mean the oversimplified version that we all think of boundaries of like protect your peace or cut them off, but like real life, soul honoring, sometimes messy as hell reality of what boundaries actually mean and why they matter so deeply. So we are going way past the surface on this one. We're talking about external boundaries, you and the outside world, internal boundaries, you and yourself, why most of us never learned what healthy boundaries even look like, how human design plays into your unique boundary blueprint, and how boundaries aren't about being harsh, they're about energetic alignment. Because the truth about boundaries is that most people associate them with like confrontation, having to say no, with being mean. But boundaries aren't walls, they're actually filters. They are what allows more of the right things to come into your life and less of the draining shit that completely keeps you stuck. So if you've heard me say you have to clear your plate, if you have a plate full of broccoli and all you want is green beans, how do we actually clear our plate? Well, the answer, my friend, is boundaries. It's about deciding what you want in your field, what you want to carry, what you want on your plate, and then getting rid of the shit that you don't want so that you can make room for the stuff that you do want. Boundaries are here to protect your nervous system, your time, your energy, your magic, and they aren't always really loud and obvious. Sometimes they're soft, sometimes they're subtle nudges, sometimes it's from your body that's just whispering, this isn't it. So here's the thing. Most of us didn't learn what healthy boundaries actually are. We were taught to be good, to make other people comfortable, to self-abandon, to keep the peace. We learned to read the room instead of checking in on ourselves. So the truth is that your boundaries probably started to erode in toddlerhood. Literally, when you have a boundary as a toddler and it wasn't respected. Maybe you were the kiddo that was always forced to hug, even when you had no interest in hugging people. Maybe you were the kiddo that got in trouble for saying no. You were the peacekeeper in your family. Maybe you were always, always, always taking care of other people's emotions because other people's emotions were volatile and were not safe. So you were taking care of them to make sure everything was kosher. Maybe you learned to overachieve so that you could feel safe or you could feel seen. When those patterns play out long enough, we start to believe that our comfort doesn't actually matter and that saying no is being selfish and that people leaving is worse than betraying ourselves. And that is where the work begins. Because if you have a boundary and it's crossed, or worse, you don't have boundaries and you haven't done that work to explore what boundaries look like for you, then you're really constantly putting your head on the metaphorical chopping block for other people. You're constantly bending over and making sure that everybody else feels comfortable, everybody else feels safe, everyone else is not burdened. But at what cost? So oftentimes the sign of a boundary being crossed either by you or by somebody else is really just the sign of misalignment. So you feel resentment creeping in. You leave a conversation feeling energetically drained. You override your body's cues, whether that be fatigue, tight chest, jaw clenching, whatever. You just keep going. You make yourself small so that other people don't feel uncomfortable. Maybe you have a hard time relaxing even when you should be off. Maybe you feel responsible for how other people feel. all of these are examples of what it can feel like in your body when you are letting your boundaries get crossed over and over and over again. Internal boundaries are just as real as the external ones, because if you're always letting your inner critic drive the bus, or you're always abandoning your routines, maybe you're always saying just one more thing when you're completely depleted, those are all internal boundary breaches, and they matter just as much as the external boundary breaches. What you're saying to yourself every single time you allow your boundary to be crossed, I want you to just imagine you, like little tiny inner child within you. And you are the protector of that inner child, right? You are the protector of your energy. You are the protector of your heart. Now, what are you saying to that little girl or that little boy every single time you allow a boundary to be crossed? Every single time they tell you that they're tired or that they want joy or that they want ease, and you keep pushing. Every single time you force them to hang around with that person that leaves you questioning who you are and what they meant. Imagine that every single time you allow that boundary to be crossed, you're doing that to a child. Now, I just want to say, we would never do that to our children knowingly, right? We would never, ever, ever knowingly hurt them that way. So I'm not saying you necessarily know how much that it hurts you. Maybe you are a little bit subconscious about it, but that's what this episode is all about. It's about to bring this to your awareness, because once it's to the forefront of your mind, you cannot keep self-sabotaging. You cannot keep abandoning yourself, because what you're doing is you're telling that little version of you that he or she doesn't matter. That hurts, right? I know any of you that are listening to this would never tell a little kid that they don't matter, that their feelings don't matter, that their wants, their desires don't matter. So when we're looking at our boundaries and we're discovering where they are and how they fit in and what we really want in our life, what will end up happening is you'll think you have a boundary, and then you'll realize maybe that boundary wasn't as lenient as you thought it was, and maybe we need to bump up that boundary. Our boundaries are going to change as much as we change, and we're evolving constantly. So don't say that just because you had this boundary now means that it's going to be your boundary forever. It's always okay to reevaluate. It's always okay to readjust. And sometimes your boundaries need to be discussed with the people around you. And sometimes your boundaries are just for you. I had a friend tell me this that completely shifted the way I thought about boundaries. She's like, Morgan, boundaries are not for other people. Your boundaries are for you, which I totally agree, because like I said earlier in this episode, they are the filter. So your boundaries are for you. Your boundaries are not, oh my God, I'm not going to let them treat me that way. Like I'm going to cut them off to punish them. No, that's actually not a boundary, because you're still energetically feeding that. Boundaries aren't made out of hate, and boundaries aren't made out of punishment, and boundaries aren't made to be this big, bad, scary thing. Boundaries are there to protect us and to provide that filter, and they are for us. So just because we put a boundary in place and somebody else keeps pushing that boundary or keeps stepping over that boundary, that's not really a reflection on them. Do you see what I'm saying? It's more a reflection on us. Now it's okay, do we love ourselves? Do we honor our energy enough to now uphold this boundary? And I'm telling you guys, it can be so tough because there is so much guilt riddled with holding boundaries. And that's why when you start to implement your human design and you start to listen to your authority, which is your boundary. So when you start to listen to your authority and you're starting to make decisions based on that, you start to realize, oh, fuck, my authority told me that I'm going to actually stay at home tonight, even though so and so wants me to go do this with them. But this is my boundary because I have to honor myself. And that can get really uncomfortable and can be really, really difficult to say, nope, I actually am going to honor myself. And then we have to work through the guilt and all of that. And I think I'm going to try implementing a mini second episode every single week. But here's the deal. If you guys want that, that means you have to start getting into my DMs or my email or wherever you know me from and start telling me what's going on in your life, what your questions are, what you're moving through, anything. Just start giving me a little bit of inspiration because I would love the mini episodes to be a little more like coaching through specific problems. So jump into my DMs. Let's start a chat. And if you don't know where to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Unfiltered Growth Co. You can find me at TikTok at Morgan Unfiltered. You can find me on Facebook at Unfiltered Growth Co. And you can email me at unfilteredgrowthco@gmail.com. Okay. So let's implement human design into this boundary discussion because I just think that this is so important. And every human design energy type really has a different experience with boundaries. And I want to kind of go into like where this can play out for you. So, generators and manifesting generators, your sacral will tell you when a boundary is being crossed. You will feel it. But are you listening? Because you feel that shit instantly in your gut, and resentment is a red flag for you. So, if you're feeling all of these obligations instead of full body yeses, that is a clue that you need to set some boundaries. You need to protect your energy because obligations is the quickest way for you to burn out. So imagine, I already used this plate with broccoli analogy, but imagine you only have a plate the size of your hand that is your energy. Okay? And everything that's on this plate is what your energy goes towards, but it's only the size of your hand. So imagine it's loaded full of your shoulds, full of your obligations. And it leaves you going, well, fuck, I actually have no energy for anything that I want to do. And basically, I'm just really fucking frustrated. I have a lot of resentment and I hate my life. You've completely lost your zest for life because your plate is full of obligations. So that's where boundaries come in. And boundaries are like, okay, potatoes, you got to go. You don't make me feel good. Okay, broccoli, you got to go because while you're fine, I want green beans. So that's what boundaries do. Projectors, your boundary needs to be really strong around your rest because you have this tendency to want to work like a generator or a manifesting generator. And your energy is not designed to grind nonstop. You also have to have inner boundaries with yourself that is telling yourself not to chime in, not to invest your energy, not to tell people and help people unless they have invited you to do so. So, you not only have to have boundaries around your rest and around you not trying to act like a generator, but you really need to have strong boundaries with your self worth and not trying to overgive or overhelp or overdo for somebody that didn't invite you to be a part of that process. And bitterness is your sign. That is your sign that a boundary is being crossed. Now, manifestors, you're not here to ask permission, but that doesn't mean that you're immune to these boundary slips because people try to get close to your fire without respecting your space. So you need a lot of space to be able to do the things that you are being urged to do. Now, the other thing is that you crave peace. Peace is the one thing you want to feel. So you need to make sure that you are not for peacekeeping Because what happens when you are not having that boundary with people and you're just trying to make everybody comfortable is you are shoving yourself into a box and you are putting tape over the lid so you can't get out. And what is that going to cause for you? That's going to cause you rage. You are going to get so angry. So angry is your red flag. You need to protect your creative space like it's sacred because it is. So make sure you're giving yourself plenty of space and make sure you are not making yourself small. You are not dimming down your urges, your desires, your dreams just to make other people more comfortable. And reflectors, your boundaries, baby, are all about your environment. You become what you're around. So you need to have the firmest boundaries. You need to get so fucking picky because when you are in an energy that drains you, you can start feeling like, who am I? If you start feeling, who am I? That's your clue that you need to create some energetic buffers with time and space and people who actually see you. Out of every energy type, you, my friend, have to have the firmest and best relationship with boundaries. Everyone honestly should. Absolutely everyone, okay? But reflectors, they just don't have any defined energy centers in their chart. They have no energy that they have consistent access to. So boundaries are specifically key for them. Energetically, boundaries are cords. They are threads of connection. And sometimes those threads become tangled, knotted, or just too damn tight. So energetic hygiene isn't just about clearing your aura once a month or under the full moon or every day or whatever. It's about checking in with, what am I holding that isn't mine? What am I tolerating that is draining me? And where have I said yes to something that I wanted to say no to? And here's the kicker. Sometimes we cross our own boundaries because we're afraid of what happens when we don't. We can see that boundary. We know it's going to affect us if we say yes to that thing. We know it and we do it anyways, right? And that's what I was saying about why it's so freaking important for us to pay attention to the fact that when we are doing those things, we are really telling that little version of us that their boundaries, their cares, their needs, their wants, their desires don't matter. So if we're scared about what happens when we don't cross this boundary, if I say no, will they leave? If I stop over giving, who am I? All of those things, that's when boundaries get really messy and quite guilt-ridden and confusing. But here's the thing, is your truth will not abandon you. You know it's a boundary. You know why it's a boundary. It's telling you in your body that it's a boundary, but your brain is what's assigning all of this guilt and all of these things. So when you're working through that, just first of all, honor yourself and give yourself a hug for honoring your energy. Because when you're honoring your energy, you're creating space for what's actually aligned with you. It might get really quiet at first, it might feel really lonely, but what you're doing is you're clearing your plate and you're making room. So, some things you can ask yourself when you're checking in with a boundary is, do I want to say yes or am I just avoiding guilt? Ooh-wee. That's a big one, right? I can't tell you how many things I say yes to so that I don't have to feel guilty. Because guilty is a feeling that none of us really love, right? When our default is to jump in and fix and rescue and overgive, just pause and breathe. And imagine you visiting that little version of yourself. And she says, but Morgan, please, I really don't want to do it. And you're looking that little girl or little boy in the face and you're like, okay, we won't do it, right? We won't do it. It is your job to protect that. It is your job to rebuild that trust. We've been talking for weeks and weeks and weeks on end about rebuilding that inner trust within you, and boundaries is one sure way to work your way towards that. So if you're really, really uncomfortable with boundaries and you're like, okay, listen, I can't right now, this is too much for me, just start with micro boundaries, really small ones. Say ending the phone call when you're tired, right? Okay, I'm going to get off the phone. I'm tired now. Whatever it may be. Not responding to a text instantly. Holy shit. Like, we don't have to just respond. We don't have to be held hostage by this little square in our hand all the time, right? So just figure out little tiny ways that maybe you can start kind of easing those boundaries into your life. The more you implement these micro boundaries, the more you're going to get empowered to start implementing bigger ones. Maybe you actually start blocking your calendar for rest, okay? Maybe you just start doing those things. And also, no can be a full sentence. I know we hate to hear it, but that over explaining, it's all over giving and it's draining your fucking energy. So if you're in a boundary hangover, I want you to sit with the discomfort, because inevitably when we hold a boundary, we feel really guilty, we feel really uncomfortable, we feel like maybe we did something wrong. I just want you to sit with it. I want you to hold yourself. I want you to find ways to regulate your nervous system, because right now you are retraining your nervous system to understand that you get to protect your peace. You don't owe your energy to everyone. You don't have to earn your rest, and you sure as hell don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That's the real magic of boundaries. It's not about being hard or cold. It's about creating that filter for yourself. It is about being able to stand in who you are and have the magic in your life that you are dreaming of. But right now, you're so overburdened. You're so over it all. Your plate is plumb full and you have nothing left to give. And boundaries are the answer. So now your homework is to share this episode on social media and write one boundary that you're going to start implementing, whether this be internal or external. It can be really vague. It can be super definitive, whatever boundary it is that you want to start implementing. Share it on social media, tag me, and DM me what you're working through and why you feel like this boundary is something that is going to shift your energy. Because when we put boundaries in place, we actually shift the frequency, and we are telling the universe, like, hey, listen, I'm not going to accept all of this. So I'm actually going to clear my closet of the shit that I don't wear. And I'm going to start manifesting and calling in, and I'm going to start getting the things that I deserve instead of all of the things and the ways I've been settling. So if you're ready to stop settling, you're ready to embrace your power and clear that fucking plate so we can have the goodness. Boundaries are your filter. That is going to be your modality of clearing that plate. Let me know how it goes. All right, that's it for today's episode of Oops, I'm Evolving. Thanks for hanging out and diving into the messy, real shit with me. If you're loving the vibe, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a review, and find me on socials to keep the conversation going. Remember, growth isn't always pretty, but damn, it's worth it. Catch you next time.